So when I was a kid, we had a saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. And you don't hear this anymore. And this kind of gets to the heart of what I wanted to talk about today, which I feel is super, super important and is something that I think about all the time. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. And this was meant to empower children, basically, to stand up for themselves when people, called them bad names or whatever, bullying in school and that sort of thing. So the discussion is kind of about the difference between those two, because these days everybody is so sensitive. But I got a comment on my YouTube channel. You've heard of it, the YouTube channel, the one we're on right now, recently, where someone, and I'm not mad about it and I don't want to disparage anybody, but it brings up a really good point, because someone said in the comment basically that I could be being insensitive by posting a video of my 2020 road trip, because that happened to be the year of the pandemic, and that because it was so difficult for people who had lost loved ones and whatnot, that it might be being insensitive for me to post that video. And by the way, I didn't really talk about the pandemic or anything in the video. I think I mentioned it. And I also mentioned all the fires that were going on at the time. And I just thought that was the craziest comment. And it really goes to the point of this sensitivity that I'm talking about. So let's get into a couple of things. The first thing is, I'm just on a road trip, and this person is, well, first of all, I'm not sure why they think it's their responsibility to school me on what I should be posting for others' feelings. So this person is commenting not that they feel triggered by me talking about a road trip I did in 2022, but that others may be. So firstly, I think that's kind of a case of unhealthy boundaries, to be like the arbiter of what other people may feel about what I'm saying. It's like, why are you even sticking yourself in the middle of this, That's the first thing. But the second thing is, I think it's really important to acknowledge that those issues that are sensitive for someone, if you're being triggered by something, that's actually, you should be doing the exact opposite of what this person was saying. This person is basically saying, don't talk about anything that might be sensitive, because people might have feelings about it. So in that case, you're sort of like, I'm the person with the feelings about it. So you, all 7 billion of you, actually need to mitigate your speech so that I am okay. Or you could do the exact opposite. 7 billion people don't have to mitigate their speech. Instead, I am going to take responsibility for my own feelings that I'm having now about this issue. Because my feelings about this issue should be indicating to me that there's something I actually need to address there. So the solution is not actually to stick your head in the sand about it and ask other people to not trigger you so that you don't have to deal with it. The solution is actually in dealing with it. One, because you're taking self-responsibility for your own personal growth and your own feelings. But two, because that thing's indicating to you something's unresolved within you. Okay? The fact that it's triggering you or making you fearful, or there's like a trauma response, old pain, that's letting you know that that's something that you need to deal with. If you don't, what happens to a person who doesn't deal with, their emotions and the things that their emotions are telling them, is that these things build up more and more and more, and you close down those feelings more and more and more, separate yourself from life that may trigger you, from people, from information, from life itself that may trigger you, and you put yourself further and further into a box, seeking that comfort, not having to deal with anything that might be painful. There's a self-responsibility where you can't ask others to protect your own feelings. You have to do that. Now, I want to go back to this sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. I think it's really important, not that we get bullied, but that we get teased. It's really important that we learn how to respond to this kind of teasing. It's really important that we learn that it doesn't matter what people say about us. It's really important that we get the strength that comes from being teased. Because the strength that comes from that is this thing where you have to realize, well, first of all, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Because words don't actually physically hurt people. Now, there's no denying words can hurt people emotionally, of course, because we're human beings and we have feelings. But those are your feelings. And what you learn from being teased is to, one, stand up for yourself, and is to, two, recognize that your self-worth doesn't come from what other people think or say. And the other thing you learn from that is you become stronger in the world in order to be able to be successful, be able to have relationships. Because what you're going to learn is that there are a lot of bad things in the world and a lot of difficult things, and you're going to have to rise to the occasion in order to be successful in this life. And if you put your head in the sand every time something difficult happens, or you try and make somebody else responsible for your own feelings, you're not going to make it in this world. You know, you're not going to make it in this world. And the weaker you are in that sense, the more you're actually going to attract more ridicule, more teasing, more narcissists. The more you have a victim mentality, the more you're going to attract this kind of abuse, because that's who they're looking for. So you don't have to pretend to be strong. You actually become strong when you learn to deal with this stuff in a healthy way. And that is processing your own feelings and being responsible for your own feelings. I mean, the other thing is you're responsible for is your response to that. So in the case of this comment I just had on my channel, the person is literally saying, you know, I should be more sensitive and more compassionate towards others. And when I made my comment, which was a rebuttal to that, like, this is ridiculous, their next comment was a personal attack. So then they said I was just an idiot in a van, which they have since deleted that comment. So they resorted to a personal attack. So the first thing is, that's not addressing the argument at all or the conversation that we're having. It's a personal attack. It totally diverts the conversation from the actual intent, which is two human beings are interacting and we're going to come to some kind of understanding, or we're not. Why is there a personal attack there? Why does that have anything to do with it? The second thing is, if I'm being bullied or attacked, if my response is to attack back, then I still haven't gotten the lesson, okay? Because if I'm okay with myself and bad names don't really hurt me, why am I going to then attack that person that said those names to me? So are you going to turn into the bully now? Are you going to make it personal and do a personal attack? Because that's actually what that is. It's the exact thing you're saying not to do, which, again, all I did was show a road trip. I never even said anything about anything. Again, I'm not mad about that comment. I just think it's a good example. In fact, I pinned it on that video as the top comment. And going back to that comment and the fact that it was referring to the pandemic of 2020, the nerve of someone to say to another human being who just went through that too, I don't know if you're aware that people had a hard time in 2020 and lost loved ones. And it might be, it's like, how, I'm not aware? How do you know that I didn't lose loved ones? How could you presuppose that I didn't go through the pandemic as well? I mean, for starters. And secondly, the idea of, as I said before, clamping down on this because people died is not allowing people to grieve for that. If you let's just shove 2020 under the rug and never look at it again. How are we supposed to grieve about what happened? And just as importantly, 2020 is something that we should absolutely be looking at. This was we're still processing it. I'm still processing it. And actually, for me, the pandemic wasn't like it was for a lot of people out there. I actually want to do a video on this because I was in a van. So it was totally different. It was spooky. I was out here in these ghost towns by myself. It was scary. So I had my own pandemic experience, and we all did. So I'm still processing that. And what happened was very important for our society. And because a bunch of laws changed and a bunch of new laws came into place that we've never had before that we didn't vote on because it was all this emergency situation. I mean, that's very serious and important to our democracy, to our country, to our safety, to our rights, to everything. And we have a lot of questions to answer about that time period. Like, are lockdowns the best solution for this? What should we do about the children? Because if they miss this schooling, it sort of sets this whole thing out of whack. And then there's the very, very sensitive issue still of the medicines that we chose to use for that and the efficacy of all of that. The information we were not only given, but it was demanded that we accept that information and only that information, not other scientists who were bringing up valid points, not other researchers in those fields that were bringing up other points, and not other possibilities of what was going on that were extremely valid. Meanwhile, we have this giant profit-seeking corporations who stand to benefit immensely from this if we use only this type of medicine. And as more and more information has come out now, we can see that the information that we were required to accept by pain of losing our job, losing our rights, having our bank accounts frozen, all kinds of very scary things, being completely canceled and losing our income and our place in society. But basically, this information that we were required to accept has now been proven wrong in many cases. So let me just say it. You were wrong. You were wrong. There's no denying that now. Has anybody come out and apologized? Have any of these emergency laws that were put into place been undone? Has anything been like, okay, now we're going to do a new plan for what happens when this happens next time, learning from what we learned, what worked and what didn't? Furthermore, has anybody been held accountable for the fact that the medicine we were using wasn't the efficacy level that we expected or that we were told that it was? Is anybody going to be held accountable for that? Is there anybody in the government that's going to be held accountable or even acknowledge that they were wrong? Is anybody going to say sorry for how poorly people were treated who questioned this at all? All of that happened, and there are just some very important questions around that we can't just shove under the rug. Like, what actually happened here, and what can we learn from it? It's very important. And a healthy society who wants to continue to exist in the future and not to turn into a totalitarian regime or just simply fall apart or simply become prey to the next actual pandemic, we have to learn from this situation. So this idea that the sensitivity of people to the difficult things that happen in life should prevent us from looking at those difficult things is absolute nonsense. I'm seeing this, and we're all seeing this increasingly in our society, and this is being used as an excuse to shut down free speech. That's what it is. If you're saying sticks and stones may break my bones, and words are also equal to sticks and stones. The fact is that if you punch me in the face, you're going to be legally responsible for that. You are not allowed to do that in this society. But if you say to me, I think your hair looks terrible, you cut your dreadlocks, but you never styled it or did anything with it, I think it looks funny and I'm going to laugh in your face. There's no law against that. And the problem is that if there were, and increasingly as there is this calling out for laws against people speaking, it throws everything into absolute chaos. Like I said before, you can't expect 7 billion people to mitigate their speech to protect this one person. What happens when this other person feels the exact opposite of this? Then what do the 7 billion people do? It's crazy to look at it that way. It has to go back to the individual's response to life and to what happens. And let's also point out, without forgetting to say, there are jerks and mean people and cruel people and abusive people in this world. And when they say things, that does hurt. And they are basically jerks and a-holes. That's who they are. You don't have to fall into their trap of being like triggered by it and then jumping into the fight. I mean, that's who they are. And there's always going to be those people. And what you need to learn to do is, grow a backbone, basically. This oversensitivity actually threatens, again, as I said, free speech. And what is free speech really? It's your thoughts. So you have your thoughts, you might mitigate them, that's your choice, and then you speak. By asking that people don't speak, you're asking that they don't think. Okay? That is very serious. That is very dangerous. When people are not allowed to think, that they're not allowed to be conscious. And that's what we are conscious beings. They're not allowed to have the individual sovereignty that is every human being's right when they're born on this planet. That's what they're asking to be shut down, is our own personal sovereignty. While, of course, at the same time asking that personal sovereignty in other areas is respected, but not when it comes to words. There is a difference between words and physical abuse. Now, let me just finish by saying, it's not as if I've never been abused. I mean, I grew up in a traumatic, alcoholic, single parent, poor, no father, moving around all the time, upbringing. And because I was such a weird, disoriented, what do they call it? Unindividuated child. I mean, I was just like completely unaware of myself or anything else. I was kind of a weird kid, and I did get bullied in school, in junior high, or elementary school. So it's not like I haven't experienced bullying. There's one time, it's a vivid memory in my mind, and it's not a painful memory. Like when I first started bringing it up, oh yeah, that happened. I actually learned from it. I was like, I actually learned that I was completely disassociated as a child. It's something that people who've been through trauma do in order to, and it's what children do when they experience trauma, in order to, it's the only way they can survive is to sort of disassociate from the experience at the time. And what you need to do to heal is to reassociate yourself back together into a whole person and be present in the moment, and learn to not continue to disassociate every time you get triggered. So what I learned from remembering this bullying experience was that I had been disassociated and that I had been bullied and that this affected how I thought of myself. And I learned a lot from that. But let me just close the video out by telling you the story of this particular bullying. And I did get, am I allowed to say this word, breasts, early in life. So I think that's part of why I was bullied. I don't know how this started, but we were all like in the playground, and it was a big open field. And I just remember literally running around the corner from this fence with a group of children running after me in the school to kick my butt, to harm me physically. And I'm like booking. I don't even remember. I don't know what happened. Okay, let me just let you know I was a good kid. I got good grades. I didn't get in trouble for the most part. It wasn't anything like that. And all of a sudden, this giant girl comes running up. I mean, this girl was huge. I can't even remember if we really knew each other or not that well. But she came running up to me and like stood with me. And the big group of kids stopped. And she said something. I can't even remember what she said. Something like, you know, you're not going to harm her or something like that. And that girl saved me. And I ended up being friends with her. I remember going to her house. And I remember she hooked me up with a babysitting job. But yeah, she saved me. I would have probably been hurt. And then, you know, those kids would have been suspended. And then they would have gotten in trouble with their parents. And I would have been physically hurt. And that would have really damaged me. And yeah, that's very traumatizing for a kid. And it was something that that affected me at the time that I had to process. And that's what humans do. You can't prevent every bully from trying to go after you, you know? What you can do is become strong, because bullies don't come after strong people. There it is. I just want to end by saying, you know, this whole thing of the being sensitive, overly sensitive about everything, and asking people to not speak about things because it might be offensive. This is basically just a clamping down. It's a clamping down of everything. Clamping down of feelings, clamping down of processing stuff so that we can grow. It's a clamping down of you're not allowed to grieve. It's a clamping down of people's thoughts and opinions. It's a clamping down of our freedom. It's a clamping down of information. It's a clamping down of the whole process that we're here to do, which is to live, you know, for the whole of humanity to move forward in our whole evolutionary process as conscious beings. I mean, nobody knows what the future can hold. We could become so conscious that, you know, we master things like, you know, telepathy and all of these things. You know, it's like 90% of our genetic code, we don't know what that's for. You know, it's junk DNA. Right. Like, we were created with a bunch of stuff that's unnecessary, but it's just junk. 90% of our DNA code. It's not junk. There's something there. All I'm saying is we don't know what heights we can reach. The last thing we should be doing is clamping those processes down that allow us to move forward. And I'm just not having it. But I really like the discussion about it. So anybody, please put your comments down below. Let me know what you think. What I like is to actually have, get to the point, you know, address the situation. If you want to go back and forth, I love that. And you can go back and forth with each other. But personal insults sort of divert the discussion into war zone. And I'm not going to war with anybody, you know. So anyway, hope you enjoyed that. Please think about it. Thanks.